Hi, I'm Aegis Cores, and welcome back to another episode of EU5. I'm playing the nation of Tuscany in the Italian region. I have a grand campaign goal of ultimately forming Italy. However, there's a number of barriers that I have and obstacles in my way. I created allies with Milan and the two Sicilies, and they each have provinces that you ultimately need, Milano and Napoli, in order to form Italy, in addition to the 224 counties or provinces that you need in the Italian region in order to form a nation. So it does require a lot of expansion. I will not get to form Italy in this video. That's going to take several centuries just because of how slow you need to move in this area. And then as I start to build my country up, start to build a lot of the provinces that increase my control, I want to build my own market in the Florence region so that I can start to build my own economy. Right now I'm kind of pushing everything towards Venice, Genoa, and Naples as the market. So I want to create my own. But there are things that you need to do in order to prepare for that, right? As soon as you do that, you'll start to go into massive debt within food. So you need to start to pump up the RGOs, especially the provinces with wheat, build some farmlands, build some fishing villages, just so that you have food. Otherwise you'll be spending 20, 30 ducats a month just to feed your population and have to import it from other markets. So the more that you can kind of control within the markets that you own, the less that you need to import from others. You can see that France has actually taken a province from Papal States in a war that they had. They're allied with Provence. So unfortunately that's another country that long term I'll have to go to war with them, but that is quite a ways down the line. They are much stronger than me. So right in this video it's just more about the consolidation of the Tuscany region, gaining all of the land in that area, and then start to push northward right into the Genoa, the Venice, and ultimately the Lombardy node once I break that alliance with Milan. My first war here is with Bologna. It seems simple enough, just two nations. However, Papal States actually does come and join the war. I think they're rival to me, so they're able to enter a war if they're your rival. Same with me. I did that in Ireland, where I was able to join a war that Scotland started, right, and I was able to easily get into the war. So you see that a lot, especially in the Italian region. Milan will eventually come into a lot of wars that I start. So you have to be aware of who your rivals are and if they're willing to kind of come in. If they border you, it could become a lot harder than you initially anticipated when you go to war. So I start that war thinking it's pretty straightforward, just siege down the Bologna land, maybe take a province from Padua. Don't want to annex them completely just because I did not co-belligerate them in the war, so taking land from them does kind of increase the antagonism beyond, and I'm already intending to take all of Bologna. And then as you can see now, the Papal States have joined. I don't intend to take any clay from them. They're the Pope, so that's always kind of a risky proposition. The ultimate goal here is to siege them down so that they give me the war reps to get some income to kind of feed my nation building, and then ultimately release Siena so that they're a nation that I can attack next without the antagonism of attacking the Pope and further declining those or deteriorating those relationships. And as they release them, they're no longer a province that they desire, so they still can ally you down the road, right? So I took one land from Padua just to kind of push my borders up a little bit, get closer to and border on Genoa for a future war with them. And then easily take all of Bologna and annex them. So another province down, I'm able to gain further areas up, and then immediately get into a civil war. Not a difficult one, but that takes you almost immediately to declaring then on Siena, right? So Siena is an easy enough civil war. I'm still trying to get out of that disaster, so I need to kind of increase my stability. So I'm paying for that. As you can see, my stability is a lot of negative events. The Siena War was pretty straightforward, right? There were two nations in there. I was able to take the Siena land and that take the two provinces there and then kind of continue to weaken and still push my. And now I've consolidated all of the territory in the Tuscan region. And then after that, I was able to, go into peacetime, build up my stability, and then I was able to finally end that disaster. It probably should have been more of a priority of me to get out of it, just because there is a ton of negative events. From there, I'm immediately called into a war by my ally Sicily, or two Sicilies. My goal here was to kind of block them from expansion. They already have some land that I need to take in the mid-Italian region, so if I siege it down, they can't ultimately take the provinces. They did take a little bit more land, unfortunately, so that's just more that I'll need to take in the future. The other thing I want to show for people, if you go to the settings, you can create two maps. One is the rivers map and then the river flow map. I created a shortcut myself. It's not a default map in the lower. I'm sure that'll eventually be added, but it does help because the rivers and the direction that they flow helps with the control, right? As you build stuff in your Florence market, it starts to flow down there towards the sea. So as you have to be mindful of directions of the rivers. That's ultimately going to be even more powerful, especially early game, than the gravel roads on increasing control. So as you kind of follow along towards the coast, and as you start to build buildings, it's prioritizing from your capital, where the next logical destination is. After getting out of that war and continuing the nation build, I turned my attention to Ferrara, who was allied to Genoa. Now Genoa is quite a large nation. I did not want to take more land. I was getting a growing coalition, so I was weary of taking any land from them unnecessarily. But they weren't much of a challenge, but I knew that Genoa is quite rich because they own their own market. So war reps would help me. So I also have no access to the sea. I don't have boats I've not built yet. So to get to their other provinces in Sardinia is not possible right now until I build some boats. But I was able to siege everything down, got some ducats and war reps, got them out of the war, and then I was able to then peace out all of Ferrara and annex them. There you can see peace deal, easy enough. Took that, continued to push forward, and now I'm bordering on Verona and Venice, which are ultimate destinations for my next conquest. So now it's turning my attention to creating a market. I have enough of the ducats to the creation, as you see, Venice, Napoli, and Genoa. So if you create a market in Florence, you'd ultimately be able to take a slice of the pie from each of them. But as I mentioned before, as soon as you do that, then you need to start importing, unless you have enough of the RGOs for wheat and fishing villages and stuff to produce your own food, livestock. As you see, you kind of get a little bit of all three based on the markets that I own. And this will start to expand, but immediately start to lose money. So I'm prioritizing growing my wheat provinces so that I don't have to pay several ducats a month just to import food. And that slowly starts to trickle down as you're able to kind of build, so utilizing the wars to start to fund, and then ultimately start to kind of build from there. I was able to pick up a useful alliance with Hungary. They do become a useful ally that I stick with for the next few centuries, actually. I don't really have any provinces of interest, mutual interest, but they do declare on Aquilira, who, I apologize if I'm butchering the name, have some land in the Italian region. So I joined their war, really just sieging down the Italian lands that I don't want them to take, so that that I ultimately can capture those down the line. And if they don't siege it, if I siege it down, then they can't take it. As you can see, they kind of take that peace deal. One other thing to note as you're struggling with building your economy, as you build a new market, your food is, you're still paying a lot. Nobility controlled serfdom is an estate you can take for for the nobility class or the patricians. Nothing says make your serfs happy by starving them, right? I don't think in the course of history usually is a great idea to starve the populace of food, but it does help with their consumption, especially as you're struggling to grow, and that just kind of gets larger as you grow in an economy. So this is definitely a worthwhile estate privilege to give out as that number starts to snowball more and more as you grow in population and start to build more cities and towns. But at the end of the day, it's using the economy to build up, using the Husite wars that I did not join from the Papal States. It's an event where you kind of get called in. I declined it, and because of that, all of Europe, I was getting thousands of ducats selling my individual country access, because the Papal States has to come through me and vice versa, Bohemia to siege down the Papal States. Everyone in Europe basically wanted access to my lands to fight each other, and I made maybe 2,000-3,000 ducats, and I was able to use that to build a lot of the burger buildings like the tanistries that can really start to snowball my economy. I am also able to piss off my estates a little bit by taxing them a little bit more, right? Similar to starving pops. If you tax the nobles, nothing bad ever happens where you piss off the nobles. And then play around with the stability and the cost of the court to, grow the economy, pull down the fort maintenance. You really start to see that scale as you build these buildings. They do take a couple of years, but are able to kind of get into wars. And speaking of wars, as you can see, we kind of jumped ahead to 1420s. It's a little bit harder to continuously push on wars, right? Every 5 years we're a parliament decision. So now you kind of have to wait a little bit longer, let the coalition start to naturally disband, and then able to declare and make my further push northward. So I was able to then attack Mantua, an ally of Genoa, with the ultimate goal of taking the Genoa lands in the Genoa province. Those are definitely profitable from of a province perspective and region perspective, and the control of that market all kind of flows there. But that will piss off a lot of my neighbors, namely Milan, who's my current ally and is assisting me in this war. They are going to break that alliance with me. Because they have provinces of interest, because I've started to grow some antagonism. So it does become expansion and then long peace deal, right? Expand and wait, right, and let it kind of build down as you kind of gather steam for the next war. So that makes us skip ahead to the 1430s. I'm now at war with Verona, and they called in Venice, who was an ally, and Milan came into the war because they are my rival. But I did have Hungary and two Sicilies in this war, so it wasn't difficult. They just have a lot of levies between the three of them and their vassals, so it became more of a difficult war than I wanted. I was not able to take any of the land from Venice. I just kind of white-pieced them once I kind of sieged down that one fort. But they do kind of wear you down, but with the three of us, we're able to kind of siege them, but we are kind of a little bit divided. So they were starting to wear down my own levies, and allies are always kind of unreliable at sticking with it. So it was just really kind of getting them down so that I can turn my attention to Milan, so I can get them out of the war. They have difficult forts. Some of them are in the Alps, so sieging them down can be problematic. But with myself and two Sicilies, I was able to siege them down eventually, and then work my way towards a peace deal. Right? It's as you can see, they do kind of come with 10 stacks still after losing several wars, so they are able to kind of raise pretty substantial levies, making this a lot more difficult than it needed to be. And then the allies are kind of unreliable, right? Like Hungary would have 40% siege capacity, and then they kind of leave the fort. I did not take land directly from Milan. I did take just kind of war reps and cash to kind of get them out. And then I turned my attention to Verona. So, like I said before, there was provinces of interest that Milan, that Hungary and the two Sicilies have. So they took some of those. So I wasn't able to take all of the provinces that I wanted, which is basically all of Verona. I ultimately want at the end of the day. But I don't think I would have been able to take it if I could. But once they kind of came out as a 1v1, Bavaria, I was able to kind of get. I tried to see if they would separate piece out Hungary and two Sicilies, but I guess they just didn't have any war weariness, right? Like they never leave. I stayed in much longer than I wanted to into this war, which I'm sure impacted my economy a little bit. As you see, I'm still making quite a bit of money. I have 400 ducats. Kind of goes up and down depending on the forts that I have, but trying to figure out where I can take the most clay without giving any of the land to my allies. Poland actually got called into the war somehow. I'm not really exactly sure how they were, but they ended up coming into the war down the line. Maybe they're rivals with Hungary, and then they were called in that way. They weren't really much of a threat. They just kind of never got any of the land in Hungary, and because they got called in so late, it was well past that 1 year mark. They were basically got called in, tried sieging down one of Hungary's forts, and then just kind of backed out of the war. So it was actually kind of simple. And as you can see, it did take quite a bit to kind of siege it all down. And then from there, it was quite a bit of antagonism. So I did take a 30-year hiatus on seizing any more land in the Italian region, where I then went back to war with Verona. So it just kind of allowed me to build all of the profitable provinces in my region, start to build roads everywhere, start to integrate all of those provinces as I really, start to kind of build my nation back, or build my economy and start to snowball that. So, we're we have to take a little bit more pauses now. Just as we take land, it becomes a little bit more difficult to take further, because we did kind of expand quickly in those first 100 years. It is a little bit more of a slower pace, but ultimately the goal of this next 100 years of the campaign was to grow, build my own market, continuously expand, eliminate some of my initial rivals, for Verona, who was too strong with me at the beginning, where I had some of those. I had a CB against them from the onset, but now they're going to be annexed, and then I was able to quickly siege down all the land that I wanted. And then I'll create a vassal in the Friuli region, because I won't be able to establish any kind of control in that region, and a vassal will then allow me to play that game, right, where I'll now have more of an opportunity to continue to expand, have them utilize that land a little bit better than I can, at least at the onset, until I'm able to establish a little bit more control in the region. So that wraps it up from here. In the next video, I'll continuously push the borders that I have in the Italian region, ultimately start to consolidate all of the Venice region, all of Lombardy, all of Genoa, as I start to expand into Sardinia and Corsica. And that's always going to be slow from a pace perspective, right? You just can't expand too quickly in this region, so you do have to take somewhat of hiatuses, use that time to really start to build your nation back up, build all the burger buildings, build all the food provinces so that you can feed your populations, build the control provinces like temples and bridges, counting houses to increase your crown power. So that is ultimately how you kind of build your country up and expand as quickly as you can to the formation of Italy, while creating a world superpower. Thanks again, everyone, for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.